There's an announcement, please. That the session in City Talks, um, uh, the title is Book Spotlight. Book Spotlight, Umar Shahid Hamid's Betrayal and Teddy. Urdu translation of his book, The Prisoner by Inam Nadeem, has been it will now be held at the Tree Garden.
Can you?
And the session there, which is the British Council session, will be held at City Talks. That is the screening of Tariq Alexander
I'll
Kaisar's
just wait
film
for that
of Forest
announcement
in
to pass.
Peril, followed by a conversation with him about mangroves drawing on
Just,
his book, The Edge of the Delta. So
just
please
waiting for
note the
the.
changes.
Assalamu alaikum and Adab. My name is Aksa Junejo and I'm Head of Marketing and Communications at Habib University, Pakistan's first community-owned institution, fully and wholly. Today we have gathered here to discuss a challenge that affects our lives so deeply, but also gives us a lot of room and opportunity as a community of engaged citizens to do something about it and hopefully solve it. Pakistan's tertiary higher education enrollment is one of the lowest globally, even falling behind Afghanistan. Globally, Pakistan is ranked 149th in tertiary enrollment with only a 9.8% enrollment rate. In contrast, neighboring countries like Afghanistan, not exactly Afghanistan, Iran and Nigeria, which have lower comparative economy rankings, enjoy higher enrollment rates. The most obvious issue is that community engagement can provide crucial support for enabling more students to access higher education. However, this community engagement goes beyond just providing resources. It encompasses not only improving access to education, but also shaping the nature of education itself. It involves safeguarding higher education, preserving intellectual freedom, and fostering its strength. The absence of a significant role played by the state has left a void that has been filled by that community is trying to fill by their commitment to create and nurture the institutions. Community engagement signifies that the society has successfully made the broader community a stakeholder in higher education. While such efforts have been concentrated in primarily in the US, the vision in Pakistan is reasonable and somehow achievable, if we may think, because Pakistanis are considered as one of the most generous nations in the world, with 1% of Pakistan's GDP dedicated towards philanthropic causes. If we talk about Karachi, it demonstrates remarkable generosity, with the community actively participating in basic health and possibly basic education. But of course, there is a strong desire within the community to engage in intellectual dialogues and discourses related to higher education. The main evidence is this literature festival, and we see how community is actively engaged. Higher education serves as a sustained platform generating widespread interest and curiosity in addressing significant issues and challenges discussed within educational institutions. When higher education receives support from the community, it not only secures essential resources, reducing dependency on student fees, but also allows for greater inclusivity. Importantly, the community's involvement safeguards intellectual freedom, preventing interference from large interest groups or the state itself. So today, we aim to explore collaborative efforts to redefine affordability and the evolving role of philanthropy or inclusivity in education, all under the overarching theme of the power of community enabling access to higher education. With this, I'd like to introduce our esteemed panelists who have joined us today. I would like to welcome Mr. Jamal Nasir, who is the Chief Human Resources Officer at HBL, Pakistan's largest commercial bank. He has over 30 years of professional experience, Prior to joining HBL, Jamal Nasser has been with organizations like Exxon Chemical, ABN AMRO, Standard Chartered Bank, and United Bank Limited. He has worked in Pakistan and internationally. He is the current president for the Pakistan Society of Human Resource Management and is on the board of governors for the Pakistan Society for Training and Development. He is also a trustee of the HBL Foundation. Jamal Nasser is a BS in Electrical Engineering from the University of Texas at Austin and MBA from the Institute of Business Administration, Karachi. Ms. Salma Ahmed Alam. Salma Ahmed Alam is a teacher by her professional qualification and is presently the CEO of Durbeen, a non-profit organization that is striving to raise the bar of public schools in Pakistan. Salma started her education career as the SMB Fatma Jinnah Government School in Karachi, where she volunteered with Zindagi Trust for 4 years. After graduating from Harvard University in 2013, Salma spent 2 years consulting with the World Bank. In 2016, after returning from Singapore with a primary teaching qualification, Salma was appointed as the CEO of Durbeen to lead a public-private partnership in the Government Elementary School of Teacher Education, Hussainabad in Karachi. We are also joined by Professor Alexander Key. Welcome, Salma. Professor Alexander Key is an associate professor of comparative literature at Stanford University. Specializing in classical Arabic literature and the intellectual history of the Arabic and Persian-speaking worlds from the 7th century onwards. His book, Language Between God and the Poets, delves into classical Arabic theories of language, poetry, and philosophy, showcasing the enduring relevance of scholars like Raghib al-Asfahani, Ibn al-Faraq, Ibn Sina, and Abdul Qahir al-Jurjani. Dr. Key is currently translating al-Jurjani's Dalail Ijaz for the Library of Arabic Literature. He also serves on the board of governors of Habib University. And last but not the least, we have Furqan Karim Kidwai. Furqan, currently the co-founder and chief operating officer of YPay Financial Services, is dedicated to democratizing personal finance in Pakistan. He spearheads initiatives at YPay, providing unprecedented access to asset management services for youth through a simplified platform. Furqan is a proud alumni of Habib University Computer Science program. I would like to welcome all our panelists and thank you so much for taking your time out for this panel and to discuss such an important issue. My first question is, of course, I would like to open the floor for the opening remarks from all of our panelists, and how do you feel can communities be actively engaged in order for us to enable our youth to get education? And here I would not like to limit, just the problem to higher education. It is about the education in general. So how can communities play their role? Starting from you, Jamal Saab.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you. I think communities and more so organizations have a huge role to play. And the reason I say that is because when we look at the sustainability of organizations, it's going to, one of the biggest challenges that we currently have is being able to get the right amount and kind of talent who will take these organizations forward. And unless these organizations work hand in hand with universities and schools and the system, we will not be able to get the kind of talent or employable talent that's going to be critical. So my view is it's one of the bigger challenges and issues facing organizations right now. Economies improve, go down, come back up, it's cyclical. But the challenge of being able to get the right kind of talent is and will remain a huge agenda item for organizations.
Right, that's really important. Yes, Ms. Salma.
So I'm going to comment on the question from the perspective of school education, in which absolutely community does play a big role, and there are a lot of current efforts as well to share with parents the importance of education, social mobility and all of that. But I would actually like to say that until parents don't see a return on investment in terms of quality and social mobility, I think what I'm trying to say is we talk about one half of the story, which is, communicating to parents the importance of education. But until we don't improve the quality of that education, the story remains, incomplete. Because yes, you can bring them up to the doors, but for them to kind of, own that process and see it through the whole 10 years investment that you're asking them, they have to see that that education is changing their kid's life, which at present
Right.
it is not. So yes, when we're looking at it from the perspective of community, I think also as providers of education, we have to make sure that we're coming through on our promise as well of delivering a life-changing education.
Yes, Dr. Alexander.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that I would agree with what both the previous panelists said about the quality of it, the importance of the quality of the education. And I think that what I might offer from a sort of broader, longue durée historical perspective is that there's really absolutely nowhere else the support can come from to create a university, to create any kind of educational institution apart from the community that it comes from. I mean, if you think it's across the long sweep of history, it's a small anomalous moment where we have these things called nation states that have taxation bases and education systems run by the nation state. That's one little solution that a few people have used across the whole, thousands of years of human history. Really, education is always paid for by communities who invest in it because it's their kids and that's what they want to see. And that's the only kind of way to get both the quality of future members of the community who are going to contribute and the quality of the education that the students are going to go through while they're in it.
I think Alex has already covered. Education is one of the most significant ways you can create an impact in the society. And one thing that I've learned while doing my venture, that sustainability is the most important thing. Whether is it about your for-profit organization or non-for-profit organization, so do higher education institutions here in Pakistan. And the best way to have an impact on the society, and especially for the youth, is supporting the higher education institutions. And I think what Jamal Saab has just said, that to get these higher education sustainable, you cannot just rely on students because of the facts Aksa mentioned. There is a wider community outreach that needs to be done to support these educational institutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Furqan, and thank you, everybody. So when we talk about communities, the corporate community in its own way is, one of, if I may say, the strongest community that has played a key role in advancing certain causes, including education and health, and you name it, from their, the CSR model that they have. So you being, a leader from that particular community, would you like to share with us your vision, especially with regards to supporting education? Because at the end of the day, of course, it's again the corporate sector that is going to benefit out of the diverse talent pool that emerges as a result of, the robust community support. So tell us probably at length the vision that the corporate sector has and what exactly are the challenges that you're facing.
Okay. Look, I see this as for organizations, I see this as a two-pronged strategy. So one is financial and the other is non-financial. And when you talk about financial, it's really about supporting schools and colleges and universities through grants, through building facilities, and through scholarships. So what we do is we have an HBL foundation, and every year 1.5% of our profit after tax goes into the foundation, and we give out donations. And we give out donations, in areas of health, education, and women development. So when we look at the education piece, it's really about helping build schools in remote areas. It's about building constructing buildings for some universities. It's about building labs. It's about computer labs, and on top of that, obviously, is a lot around bringing in scholarships, which we do quite frequently. So that's one part. But I think the more important piece and the role that organizations and corporates need to play is really working with universities and really helping both the universities and the students get to a level where they're very employable when they come out of these universities. So what we do is we have a University Alliance program. We're currently working with 15 different universities across Pakistan, and these are universities which specialize in areas of management, agriculture, women, and technology, because those are the current challenges that we have for the country, and thus for our organization as well. And so what we've tried to do is, it's really not about bringing in a lot of kids for an internship, 6-week internship, and making them photocopy and go away after 6 weeks, so that's really what this is not all about, or going to job fairs. We're very clear. What we want to be doing is working with the academia on research. We want to give real life long-term projects to these students. So currently we're working with the university on a blockchain project. We're working with another one on a sustainability project. We've helped develop a curriculum for data privacy. We've helped develop a curriculum for another university around information security. These are our challenges in the current time. And we can't solve these ourselves. We need to work with the professors and with the students to come up with the right kind of solutions for us. So it helps them, it helps us. So there's a business case for the support that organizations can and will and should be giving to these especially the universities. So that's the way I see it, and I think that's the model I see corporates and organizations following, where it's really value add and giving the students and the professors the kind of experiences and challenges which are really going to change their thought process and give them the kind of experiences that are going to be required.
Thank you so much, Jamal Saab. As we keep hearing these days, we have to create a workforce that the future workforce, which is really ready to take on any challenge that comes their way. You cannot just have some limited, technically skilled individuals these days. Salma, coming to you. So there was this comment by one of our members from the audiences during the last session, and we were discussing inspiring men in humanities. Sawal ye tha ki, one of my nephew, he kind of studied from one of the best universities, and he ended up being a teacher at a local university. And this is not the future that I kind of looked for him. So what's the use of the education if you have to end up becoming a teacher? And this is what is the jihad that you are actually, doing these days. Because teaching in itself, and you spoke about the quality of education, and here we are discussing the role of communities, which goes beyond just supporting financially. So tell me about your challenges, because it also requires a lot of community to be accepting of the fact that teaching is a profession, right? And you have to qualitatively do something in order for communities to support financially, right? So tell us about your challenges, and maybe if you want to comment on that thought process, which is still pretty much there in our minds.
Thank you, Aksa. That's a very relevant question. Actually, whenever we have the privilege of speaking at forums like this, and people come afterwards eager to help, and they say, what can we do? The first thing I tell them is, go find somebody who has just completed schooling and inspire them to be a teacher. That is the greatest role we can expect community to play. You're right, it's not financial, right? These are mindsets that we're battling with. Pakistan as a nation, and I would like to definitely say that our struggles with teaching prestige are not unique to Pakistan. They are certainly true in, for example, the US. It's true in a lot of other countries where the status of the teaching profession is falling, and by virtue of that, of course, that's having its impact on the education system. So look, let me tell you sort of how our journey battling this mindset has been. So we're fairly young. We're 5 years old as an organization, and very quickly early on realized that, I mean, it's a case of trying to put the horse before the cart in many ways, because we're putting up this, par excellence Bachelor of Education degree program to train teachers. But then we recognize that, anybody who enrolls in any degree program does it because they see sort of a return on investment, right? Whether that's financial or in several other terms. And for us, that's been the hardest thing, because we're saying that, look, come to us. By the way, our degree program is free. It's fully subsidized. All of our students that enroll, they just sign a 7-year contract which says for 4 years we're committing to a subsidized education, and in turn you have to commit to 3 years of public service. So, but despite this, despite the fact that we're giving a high quality of education at no cost, we really struggle because there is this wider perception that those who can will not teach, right? So our work in recruitment has been, we literally, I mean, it's one of our most exhaustive functions because it requires us literally going face to face into communities, intermediate colleges, A-level programs, and really trying to inspire, right? Because the problem runs much deeper than teachers don't get paid well. The problem runs that, exactly as you said, that somebody from a reputable university, it's not going to be a matter of pride for parents or for anybody to know that a graduate went on to become a teacher. So same with our student body, right? I mean, it's really funny speaking to them because they all narrate these anecdotes from their homes where, people give them pitiful looks when they find out that they're training to be teachers. So in closing, so don't take up too much time, I would like to share that, look, our work is in a state of evolution, right? So our initial struggles, we quickly realized that unless we can find systemic ways to make teaching more attractive, we will not be able to pull talent this way. So one of the most important things that's materialized recently is we worked with the Khan University, put together a white paper on teacher licensing last year, and that sort of became a springboard for policy advocacy that we did for a good 1 year, and that finally materialized in May of this year. The Sindh cabinet approved the teacher licensing policy. Okay, now teacher licensing policy is it's very important reform in our work of making teaching more attractive, because it's created now through the policy, the government has created a whole new cadre of grade 16 teaching posts. Okay, normally teachers are inducted in grade 14. So these are more financially attractive positions, and to take the teaching licensing exam, you have to have a B.Ed degree. You have to be professionally trained. Okay, so again, this is then hitting at this idea that anybody can be a teacher. Right? And when you take that exclusivity away from any profession, your best and your brightest automatically don't want to go there. Right? They want that competition, they want that trigger, they want that prestige with it. So this is a very important policy reform that we think we're going to see a change, not just in terms of the students making decisions, but of course we know parents are a big part of this career decision, right? And so if all of them can sort of see that there are financial rewards, there is more respect in society, then we're really hoping to kind of, move the needle on who becomes a teacher in Pakistan.
Really interesting. So, Dr. Key, coming to you, you are a board member at Habib University, and you yourself are a teacher, right? So, okay, so talking about Habib University, it is Pakistan's first completely and fully, like seriously, I emphasize and re-emphasize on this fact, fully supported by a community and institution that is fully supported by a community, which is a culture in the US. Right, so you talk about Harvard University, you talk about all the Ivy Leagues, all other centers of excellence, they are, supported by the community. So, and it took us maybe some centuries to bring that model to Pakistan. So, can you kindly tell us about the US and the culture and the country that this model actually originated from? And, what exactly it took for the USA to become the way it is when it comes to higher education and community support only. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I think there are two. Is that on? Yeah. So I think there are two things that. There's one thing in particular. Is that on? It is on there. Okay. So I think the thing in particular that I'd like to focus on in telling the story of higher education is the permanence of it. It's the importance of commitment of capital, like communities committing capital to institutions that are going to last for a long time. And like a couple of examples, because I think that a couple of examples where I've seen this have real effect. So one of them would be in the United States, where, I mean, Harvard was founded by a small businessman who had a pub in London and sold the pub and put the money into a university on the East Coast before America existed as a state. And Stanford is funded by, you know, a not particularly ethical capitalist who was running a railroad across America and stealing the land from the Native Americans, and was setting up like a, you know, an outpost, a deliberately colonial outpost of European civilization on the western seaboard in a rural area. So none of these people could have predicted what those institutions were going to look like in the long term, 100, 200, 300 years later, but they put the capital in to establish something permanent. And in fact, this morning I was just talking to two friends here in Pakistan who had been in they'd been doing a Quranic private study circle for a number of years and weren't enjoying it, or were finding that they had kind of political problems with it. And then they met a different teacher, and the different teacher who taught them a set of different intellectual options. This is like within the particular kind of question of exegesis. That teacher came from a traditional madrasa education. Again, the people who set up the traditional madrasa education structure hundreds and hundreds of years ago could not have predicted that in the 21st century, that would be the role that traditional education in Quran, Tafsir, Hadith, Mantiq, Falsafa was going to. They couldn't have predicted that was the kind of outcome. Same thing for Stanford in Silicon Valley. That robber, baron, rapacious, violent capitalist who put his money into the institution could never have predicted that Silicon Valley was going to happen. And there was going to be this sudden explosion of wealth, and then the university would just find itself there. So again, I think the key thing to think about in terms of how community support works and how educational institutions work is it's the commitment to something permanent that's going to be a permanent good for the community that you can't predict kind of what's going to how it's going to be useful in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Key, for your thoughts and sharing your thoughts. Furqan Kareem. Furqan is a celebrated alumni of Habib University. MashaAllah, he's done so well after graduation. Furqan, what exactly are your thoughts about the opportunities that students get as a result of community support, and how it transforms a life or maybe lives? What exactly are your thoughts on that?
I think
Maybe you want to share with us your own journey.
Yeah, I think it's important, and it is true that if Habib had not funded my education, I would not have been sitting over here, or I would not have dared to start my venture, which I started 3 years ago. I think apart from financial support that you get from higher education institutions, there is a lot that you can take through your higher education studies. You meet the right set of people, which otherwise you would not meet if you're not into that higher education institution. And I'm not just talking about Habib. I've seen many examples in other universities across Pakistan where people were fortunate to meet the right set of people they were able to network the right set of people, and that then their journey changes over time. So, talking through my own example, we basically, through YP Financial Services, which is my venture, we impart financial literacy, personal finance 101 education, especially among the youth that are studying in universities or are early mid-career professionals. And we have, I think, imparted this personal finance 101 education to more than 100,000 kids across Pakistan. And I do know many examples of those kids who have now started preaching the same in their families and in their sub-communities. So when we talk about the impact, so it's not just the direct beneficiary that gets the help from this community. It has many folds across further sub-communities, that all the touch points that are touching that individual creates impacts across the communities. So I think even if I talk about my example, if I don't socialize with the current students of Habib University, the question is, am I adding a value to the university? No, I'm not. So if you are not able to financially support the institution, you can do it in many ways. You can be a bridge for them in terms of creating the credibility for that institution, or the reputation that is needed to create the linkages with the wider community. So I think that's it from my end, and I will like to further questions.
Thank you so much, Furqan. So my next question is to, to Jamal Saab or Salma. First, Jamal Saab, you can go first. So as Dr. Key said, that, the community's commitment to support something that is permanent, that is going to stay and yield greater results over the centuries, let's say. This requires a thoughtful approach in an individual's mind, right? So in Pakistan, when we see the culture of, let's talk about philanthropy to start with, the immediate benefit, or maybe the, the instant validation that you get by supporting causes like education, the health, or maybe the charity, these are the priorities these days if we look at how the philanthropic money is being distributed, right? So what do you think about this mindset? I understand there is a need for community to be supported that way, but what exactly you thought of it as a long-term approach, this mindset?
Look, our ethos around a lot of this comes from our main shareholder, which is the Khan Fund for Economic Development. And when you talk to them, and their concept of medium term would be 20, 30 years. I mean, you talk to them about what is, so if medium term is 20, 30 years, what is long term? And the answer is, lifetime. And so that's how we think. And that's really what our ethos is. And that's why, we're 80 years old as an institution, but we don't think about what's going to happen in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. And that's, when we talk about the HBL Foundation, where, which is the arm that we have, which gives out the donations, our focus is really around, donations which are going to be sustainable in the long run. It's not about, giving, somebody, funds to operate for next year. We shy away from those kind of things. We'd rather build infrastructure, buildings, machineries in hospitals, etc. And that's really what we do, because we want to make sure that we give organizations equipment or infrastructure which is going to be self-sustaining. And we work with them to help them, even financially. We help them throughout their endowment funds, etc., which are then going to continue to sustain, permanently. So we'd rather go that route rather than give a scholarship for one person for 1 year. We'd rather not do that, but set up an endowment fund which is going to be self-sustaining. So that, I think, is important. Yes, it costs more money, but that's really, we'd rather do that and make a long-term impact rather than a short one, and that's how we think.
Yeah, but when we talk about individual philanthropy, I understand that perspective. Individual philanthropy has some other priorities, which is again the short-term benefit or maybe the validation that they get at the end of the day. What role can probably corporates play? I understand this is not your wholly, solely responsibility, but to educate maybe, you know, individuals who are actually contributing, but not towards the institution building. So maybe, you know, just with regards, with respect to educating them.
So what we do is there's a lot of work we do on sustainability, and this is, this is one of the elements of sustainability that we work on. And over the last, 2 or 3 years, I think we've made a very conscious effort to work with other organizations and really help them understand what we're doing. Again, most people and most employees don't even know about HBL Foundation because that's not really who we are. So we just want to go give and help communities rather than tell people what we've been doing. And again, so but over the last couple of years, we thought it's important. When we stepped back and we thought about it, we said, I think it's important for other organizations and other institutions to also understand the potential impact organizations like ours can make. And that's really how we're trying to influence and educate other organizations and institutions as well.
Right, that's amazing. Salma, the same question to you, but I would like to add something more to it. You are working with a model of public-private partnership, right? And I've, of course, listened to some of your interviews where you've explicitly said, and rightly so, कि अगर स्टेट की इन्वॉल्वमेंट नहीं होगी तो बड़े लेवल पे आप एज सच कुछ कर नहीं सकते हैं, राइट? अ फ्यू इंडिविजुअल्स कैन इनिशिएट अ कॉज बट स्टेट नीड्स टू स्टेप इन एंड टू काइंड ऑफ मेक इट वर्क इन अ मच more sustained way. So what challenges have you faced? Because again, it's a public-private partnership, because private individuals, of course, they have to play a key role. And then there comes public. So what are your challenges? Number one, how do you see it as a model?
Yeah. So I'd like to build on what Jamal Saab has said. You've exactly identified correctly that we're a public-private partnership, but perhaps less known is the fact that we are a public-private partnership which, of course, has a financial model that's attached to it, involving certain amounts of disbursements every 6 months. But what's less known is the fact that we've never actually taken public funding to date. We're entirely run on individual donors and corporate donors. That's how we are presently keeping the organization afloat. Now, I'd like to actually talk about why we did that. So we're a unique public-private partnership in the sense that we fall in the category of unsolicited PPPs, which means that the private sector took an idea to the government and suggested that we want to partner with you on this initiative. So, we approached them, we identified the particular site where we wanted to do this project, and the rest is history. But what is important to know is that this was the first public-private partnership in a higher education institution and a teacher education institution. Now, to give you a couple of anecdotes to put things in context, when we first went into this college, it's one of the oldest teacher training colleges of this province, dating back to the 70s. We found certain buildings had been completely repurposed as residential facilities. And residential facilities by the men who were tasked to govern teacher education institutions. So you can imagine the conflict of interest that we faced. Needless to say, the entire tendering became very convoluted, with a lot of, us being called a lot of things and our motives being constantly questioned. And so something that should have taken 6 to 12 months ended up taking 2.5 years. Our tender process was 2.5 years. And so against that backdrop, we sat down when finally the project was awarded and we signed the contract. We all sat down to think, given all of this quote unquote bad blood that had already gone down, was it wise to take public funding? For the audience who of course are from Pakistan, you know that public funding often comes with strings attached, okay, in the forms of political pressures, political influence, and then of course also in the sense of, NAB. So if somebody wants to bring you down, it's very easy to go say, oh, I've heard that there's some, financial mismanagement happening there, go check it out. And then the courts get involved. And so it's very easy to, bring down projects like this, particularly when they're at inception and quite vulnerable at that stage. So coming back to what Jamal Saab said, if at that stage we didn't meet the donors that we did, today our work wouldn't exist, okay? And I'd like to give credit definitely to HBL Foundation, and they are one of our current donors as well. But also Tabba, Ali Tabba has been one of our, and I would say visionary, because when we brought him to the site, of course, nothing existed, right? And we sold to him a vision, and he believed in that vision, and made a tremendous investment in us at that stage and continues to today. So, coming back to what Jamal Saab said, I think, foundations and corporates like this are in a unique place to give life to these sort of fledgling organizations that have the potential to do tremendous work, but without this sort of investment and capital upfront, we would never see light of day. So it is, it's just a matter of us being able to find them and them being able to find us. I think that's the link that perhaps needs to be more effective, but we were lucky enough and the rest is history. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Salma. And again, from what Salma said, I have another question from Dr. Key. And you rightly pointed out, if you take money from public institutions, it does come with strings attached. You have to do one thing or the other in order to justify that you are the right place to invest. So what it is like in the US, and then you have much more now experience of working with, serving at the board of Habib University. How do you think that involving communities, like broader communities, it actually allows a university to operate much more independently, intellectually and otherwise? So how do you see all of this?
Thanks. Yeah, I think, as my colleagues were saying, the long-term, multi-decade, kind of multi-century perspective is key, because what that reminds us is that it's built on trust. It's a trust that the capital that comes in might not necessarily be there to see the impact, 200 years from now, and certainly won't be able to get an output report at the end of the year, because human lives don't last as long as the institutions that humans fund. I think I think that's also a good way to think about the difference between state funding and private funding, because states, by their very nature, if I think of California and the difference between the University of California system that's state funded and Stanford, which is a private university, is that, although I have a number of very serious ethical concerns about the process that created the founding of Stanford, and I'm kind of much more comfortable with the taxpayer process that created the University of California, it remains the fact that the University of California is dependent on the state budget, and the state budget is dependent on the economy, whereas Stanford's private endowment gives it the freedom to ride out the varieties of the economy. And then this is a really important thing. It gives it the freedom to then work through the original sin of its own founding. Stanford is now in a position, a good 100 years, it's 100 years old, to have its faculty go through all the injustices that went into creating the institution. And then the last thing I would say is that the reason I'm on the Habib Board of Governors is I'm so excited by the intellectual work my colleagues at Habib are doing. And they don't have the moral and ethical problems with the founding of the university that I have back at home at Stanford. Habib is exciting because it's doing a great job, and it's 7 years old. And it's got the ethical and the moral case right from the beginning in a way that Stanford did not have. And again, so that's creating the kind of trust from the people that put the capital into the university, the trust that if you get things right at the beginning and you establish that trust with your donor base, that's a trust that it's going to keep going for decades and decades and centuries.
Thank you, Dr. Key. Furkan, I have a question to you. You have been to, again, Stanford University for your summer school program and the kind of education you got at Habib. You earlier, shared your experiences with us that once you got there, you did not really find, let's say, not just a cultural shock, but educational as well. You eased yourself in quite easily the moment you landed there. So how was that experience for you?
I think, again, the experience was very transformational in a way because I was a computer science major, and I think no place better than Stanford would give you an opportunity to deep dive your computer science skills into the entrepreneurial skills. So having the right connection, building the right connection from Habib to Stanford, I think that enabled me not just to excel over there, but also leverage what was present over there for us. And just building up on the last point, what all of the fellow panelists have said, I think you can enable the wider community at the start of existence, but getting back to Eric's point that you have to enable trust so that they remain long-term partners. And I think what I learned from Stanford right now, that more than 50% of the endowments come through their alumni network. So I think it is the responsibility of us as alumni to take this initiative to the next step and being the major stakeholders, whether in terms of the monetary value or in terms of other value proposition that we can provide to an institution. So I think that was the most viable learning that I took from Stanford.
Thank you so much, Furkan. And with this, I would like to open the floor for questions. And yes, do we have a mic?
Hello, my name is Zamanullah Sand. I'm founder Teacher Development Webinars, and it's a project to support teachers with educational or teacher development facilities, opportunities. So my question to you is that in our context, in a Pakistani context, my observation through the last 3 years have told me that often we come with these educational be it MOOCs or webinars or training sessions, but we are aiming those teachers in Pakistani context who we aim will be attending or should be attending these sessions do not get up registering for these facilities, and oftentimes these opportunities are go to those who are interested in it and who do not in my point of view most of the times need those professional development opportunities, but because of their interest and motivation. So my question to Dr. Key and Salma, Key maybe sharing the foreign perspectives, and you in Pakistani context, that what how do you motivate the right person to pursue these programs, be it teacher education at that. So yeah, thanks.
The question is, I think, for you, who was this question for?
Yes.
For both of them.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, sure.
Okay. Looking at this, but I don't know if, sorry, I didn't hear your introduction, but maybe I can at least comment on the public. Are you from the public sector or the private sector?
Yes, I am from the public. My name is Amanullah Sand. I'm founder Teacher Development Webinars.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. Public sector. Okay, if we can tie in, and what I'm saying is not unique or novel in any way. These are conversations that have been happening for the longest time. The time for action is also long past, but unfortunately the action has still not materialized. But very simply, CPD needs to be tied to promotions, right? In the system, as a government school teacher, right now the promotion structure is based on time scale. So when you have X number of years of experience, you're automatically promoted to the next grade level. It's not tied to further trainings and, career advancement in that way. So I think, again, I'll say it, I'm not saying anything novel, but this is needed. This is the way to get CPD trainings, insets to the teachers who need them most, right? Because right now there's no push on them to pursue it otherwise. So.
Yeah, and I think all I would add to that, and I'm highly sympathetic to the position. I used to work in development, and this question of like, how do you access the beneficiaries is like existential. I think the only thing I can offer now I'm in academia is that, again, with the long time scale, I mean, certainly the way I feel as a literature professor, you can't go out and compete for the students. You just have to offer the absolute kind of best teaching, like the best product you can. And they come, they don't, they don't. Like, it doesn't change the quality of the product and the quality of the impact. And I think that, I mean, certainly from the faculty perspective, desperately chasing enrollment and thinking if only we could get like 20% more in the literature classes, that it would be better. I'm not sure. Like, it's better to focus on making the literature classes as good as they can possibly be, and then that's where the impact will come from.
Thank you. My question to Salma Alam, you were talking about public-private partnership. Public-private partnership का एक्ट है जो एक लीगल डॉक्यूमेंट्स है in every province. मुझे नहीं पता कि हम within that legal act हम ऑपरेट करते हैं या outside. Secondly, I'm from public sector. मेरे एक्सपीरियंस में ये है कि प्राइवेट सेक्टर के भी अपने बाइस्ड हैं एज अ पार्टनर. वो फॉर एग्जांपल अर्बन बाइस्ड है, दे वांट टू वर्क विद इन द अर्बन सेंटर्स. मैं बलूचिस्तान से हूँ, दे केम टू अस एंड दे वांट टू वर्क इन जोब इन तुर्बत, बट दे आर नॉट रेडी टू वर्क इन क्वेटा. सेकेंडली, पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप एक्ट में यूजुअली प्रोविंस रेवेन्यू ओरिएंटेड हैं. वो ऐसे पार्टनरशिप ढूंढते हैं जहाँ पे रेवेन्यू जनरेट हो, जबकि हेल्थ में और एजुकेशन में रेवेन्यू का वो कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं है. तो आपको जो डिफ़िकल्टी यू आर फेसिंग, इज इट रिलेटेड टू द रेवेन्यू जनरेशन और बिकॉज यू वांटेड इन सर्टेन लोकेशन एंड द पब्लिक सेक्टर डज नॉट वांट यू टू वर्क इन दैट पर्टिकुलर एरिया?
It's a very, very good question. Okay, so दो तीन आपके मैं जवाब देती हूँ. सबसे पहले, we're not revenue generating. So our model is that जो तमाम student body admission लेती है, they all sign a 7-year agreement with us, जिसमें दूरबीन commits to fully subsidize their cost of education for 4 years, and they in turn have to commit to 3 years of public service afterwards. So our model is, we're not a revenue generating organization. As Akshay said in the beginning, our core goal is to strengthen the public education system, for which we think top class teachers are important and they're the missing ingredient. So but I recognize we're an anomaly. Okay, public-private partnerships are premised on this idea that the private sector will come when it sees a profit or a financial incentive to do so. Education becomes a big problem, right? Particularly teacher education, okay? I mentioned earlier about teacher licensing, which we hope will create more of an appetite for degree programs in teaching, but the status quo right now is that B.Ed degree programs are shutting down in the private sector, okay? Because students themselves are seeing no real return on investment. Teaching is not a very highly paid profession, has been in the past. So, they actually, based on our model, the government tried to roll out more PPPs in teacher education. They have not been successful so far. One party they did the whole tendering process, everything, and then they withdrew when they realized that, it's just not viable. So there are all of these complexities. I think this is why PPPs are also needed in sectors where the private sector would otherwise not go, right? So then the government has to make it lucrative enough to bring in the expertise of the private sector to run these sectors well. So, but yeah, the rural-urban issue remains. You would be happy to know, at least I can speak for ourselves. We're presently located in an urban setting because we recognize it's low-hanging fruit. It's the easiest starting point. But very much so our work will be scaling up, not just to other urban centers, but other rural areas as well in the next 2-3 years.
We have one last question.
Hi. So my question to the panel is about culture of giving. So as a fundraiser for the cause of higher education, it's a very hard sell in Pakistan. Alexander, I see that culture, that tradition of giving in the West. What makes it so compelling there and so acceptable? And as influential corporate citizens and as citizens with a voice, how do we influence that change here? How do we make this cause for higher education more compelling for Pakistanis?
I think I would just say that for a lot of people who invest in their capital, their hard-earned capital in higher education, it's like it's a public statement of trust in an idea that I think reflects well on the giver. Or certainly that's the way. It's like I buy this piece of art in order for it to reflect well on me in the long term. I commit to an intellectual project that I believe in that I may not see the fruition of because it reflects well on me as a leader in the community.
My view, I think, and I don't want to generalize here, but I think you will have a challenge where individuals, it'll be more challenging for individuals to be able to donate because they'd like to be recognized relatively quickly, versus corporates who will be in it for the long run and really not looking for recognition next year or the year after. And I think so. I would venture to say I think the easier route would continue to be corporates. But yes, when you go into the West, etc., there's a lot of individual donations that you do get. So that will remain a challenge.
Want to say something? Oh, sorry. All right, so the time is actually over, and thank you so much. It was an honor for me, especially to moderate this session. And when we kind of gave this message, or when we reached out to the community with a message that now is the time for them to step up and support the institutions of higher learning, or maybe just prioritize institution building when it comes to giving. We did get some wonderful response, and it is because of that we have institutions like Habib University, like Doorbeen, and all such amazing initiatives have happened because of the community support. So absolutely, there is a lot of positivity already there, and it's just that we need to not give up, but continue doing the good work that you all are doing. So thank you so much, and I would like to end with that one-liner that I learned from our President Wasif Rizvi of Habib University. He ends up saying that only committed and compassionate communities create great institutions. So communities who are giving, who are contributing, and the communities who are actually putting in a lot of effort to come up with such qualitative institutions, such as we have not just in Karachi but in Pakistan, and of course in the US. Thank you so much. Thanks to the engaged audiences. We all are really grateful for you, for your time. Thank you so much.